My daughter claimed I ruined her life until she needed the patent. She signed away. The call came at 11 on a Tuesday night, and I knew before I answered that something had shifted in the world. My daughter's name on the screen after 3 years of silence carries a weight that no ordinary phone call ever could. I let it ring twice more, not out of spite, but because I needed those few seconds to steady myself. When I finally pressed the green button, her voice came through brittle and rushed, stripped of the coldness I had grown accustomed to in our final months together. "Mom, I need to talk to you about the patent." I sat down slowly on the edge of my bed, the springs creaking in the familiar way they always have. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked once and then fell quiet. I said nothing, letting the silence stretch between us like a wire pulled taut. "Mom, are you there?" "I'm here, Rebecca," she exhaled sharply. "There's a company, a big one. They want to buy the design, but the lawyers say there's a problem with the ownership chain." I looked at the photograph on my nightstand, the one from her college graduation where she still smiled at me like I had hung the moon. That was 14 years ago. A lifetime, really. "I imagine there would be," I said. "The patent in question was for a modular water filtration system designed for emergency deployment. Compact, efficient, remarkably simple once you understood the flow dynamics." Rebecca had conceived the core idea during her junior year of engineering school, sketching it on napkins during our Sunday dinners. I had spent 30 years running a small engineering consulting firm before selling it to fund my retirement, and I recognized immediately that her concept had genuine merit. What I also recognized was that she had no idea how to protect it, manufacture it, or bring it to market. So I helped. That is what mothers do. What Rebecca remembered from those early years was a different story entirely. She remembered interference, control, and a mother who could not let her succeed on her own terms. She remembered arguments about production timelines and quality standards. She remembered the afternoon I told her that the manufacturer she had chosen was cutting corners on the filter membranes, and how she accused me of sabotaging her confidence. What she did not remember, or chose not to remember, was that I had been right about those membranes. 2 months after she overruled me, an entire batch failed quality testing. The manufacturer went silent, then bankrupt. Rebecca blamed the loss on my negativity, my insistence on perfection, my inability to trust her judgment. The patent, though. The patent she had signed over to me during our second year of development, when she needed capital to keep the prototype work moving forward. She had needed $40,000, and I had provided it in exchange for formal ownership of the intellectual property. We had both signed the documents in my lawyer's office on a gray Thursday afternoon. She'd been eager then, grateful even, promising that once the product launched successfully, we would revisit the arrangement. The product never launched, not under her direction at least. After the membrane failure, after the arguments that followed, after she told me I had ruined her life by treating her like a child instead of a partner, she walked away from the project entirely. She walked away from me too, moving to Portland without leaving a forwarding address. I had the patent transferred into my name cleanly and completely. The documents were filed correctly, the ownership chain was unbroken, and I had continued to pay the maintenance fees every year since, not because I expected to profit from it, but because I could not bring myself to let her work simply expire into the public domain. Now she needed it back. "The company is called Meridian Water Solutions," she said, her voice taking on the clipped efficiency I remembered from her college presentations. "They're one of the largest humanitarian supply contractors in the country. They want exclusive rights to the filtration system for disaster response applications. The offer is substantial." How substantial? A pause. $2.4 million for the patent outright, plus royalties on units deployed. I let that number settle into the room. $2.4 million. For an idea sketched on napkins at my kitchen table, refined through 2 years of arguments and setbacks, abandoned in bitterness, and kept alive only because I could not let it die. "That is substantial," I agreed. "Mom, I need you to transfer the patent back to me, or at least sign off on the sale so I can receive the proceeds. This is my design. You know that. You've always known that." I stood up and walked to the window. The street was quiet, bathed in the pale orange glow of the corner streetlight. My neighbor's cat was sitting on the hood of a parked car, perfectly still, watching something I could not see. "Rebecca," I said, "you haven't spoken to me in 3 years. You told me I ruined your life. You told me I smothered you and controlled you and made you doubt yourself. You moved across the country without telling me where you were going, and now you call me at 11 o'clock at night because you need something. This isn't about us. This is about the patent. The patent is about us. Everything between us has always been about this patent." She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had lost some of its brittleness. "Can we at least meet? Can we talk about this in person?" I thought about the last time I had seen her face, contorted with anger in my driveway, telling me that she wished she had never asked for my help. I thought about the Christmas cards I had sent that came back unopened. I thought about the birthday calls that went straight to voicemail. "Yes," I said finally, "we can meet. I'm 63 years old, and I have learned that patience is the only reliable tool for navigating complicated relationships. Anger burns out. Hurt fades into a dull ache that you learn to carry without noticing. But patience, the willingness to wait for clarity, that stays with you." I did not sleep well that night. I lay awake thinking about the years when Rebecca and I had been close, when she would call me from her dorm room just to talk about her classes, when she would drive home for weekends and we would cook dinner together while she told me about her professors and her friends and her dreams. She had been brilliant even then, her mind moving in leaps that sometimes left me struggling to keep up, but she had also been fragile in ways she did not recognize, quick to interpret criticism as rejection, prone to seeing obstacles as evidence that the world was stacked against her. I had tried to teach her resilience. I had tried to show her that setbacks were information, not verdicts. But somewhere along the way, my attempts at guidance had curdled into something she experienced as control. The next morning, I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table with a folder of documents I had not looked at in years. The patent application, stamped and dated, the assignment agreement signed by both of us, bank records showing the $40,000 transfer, letters from my lawyer confirming the chain of title. Everything was in order, everything was clean, everything was legal beyond any reasonable dispute. But legality and family are not the same thing. I had learned that lesson the hard way. Rebecca arrived on Friday afternoon, 3 days after her phone call. She pulled into my driveway in a rental car, a silver sedan that looked fresh from the lot. I watched her from the living room window as she sat behind the wheel for a full minute before opening the door. When she finally stepped out, I was struck by how much she had changed. Her hair was shorter now, professional. She wore a gray blazer over a white blouse, the uniform of someone who has learned to present herself to the world in a certain way. But her movements were the same, that particular tilt of her head when she was nervous, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear with her left hand. I opened the front door before she reached it. "Rebecca." "Mom." We stood there for a moment, neither of us moving to embrace. Then I stepped aside and gestured her in. She walked through the entryway slowly, her eyes moving over the photographs on the wall, the furniture that had not changed in years, the small details of a life she had chosen to leave behind. When she reached the living room, she turned to face me. "The house looks the same. I've never been much for redecorating." She almost smiled at that, a flicker of something familiar crossing her face before it disappeared. "No, you haven't." I offered her coffee and she accepted. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same table where she had first sketched the eye filtration system on a stack of paper napkins while I watched and asked questions. The irony was not lost on either of us. "Tell me about Meridian," I said. She wrapped her hands around her mug, a gesture I remembered from her childhood when she would hold hot chocolate the same way on winter mornings. "They found me through a conference presentation I gave last year. I've been working on water systems for a nonprofit in Portland, designing filtration units for rural communities in developing countries. The work is similar to what I was trying to do back then. More focused on implementation than innovation, but the core principles are the same." "And they recognized the connection to the original design?" "One of their engineers did. He pulled the patent filing and realized it matched the system I was describing. He reached out, we started talking, and eventually they made an offer." She paused, looking down at her coffee. They want the patent because it gives them exclusive manufacturing rights. Without it, they can build similar systems, but they risk infringement claims. With it, they own the space. And they assumed you owned the patent. I told them I did. I let that sit between us for a moment. That was not entirely accurate. I thought it was. I thought we had always planned to transfer it back once things stabilized. I didn't realize you had never done the paperwork. The paperwork was done, Rebecca. It was done correctly. The patent is in my name because you signed it over to me in exchange for funding. That was the agreement we made. Her jaw tightened. That was supposed to be temporary. There was nothing temporary about it. We had lawyers present. We both signed. The terms were clear. The terms were that you would help me get the project off the ground, and then we would figure out the ownership later. No, I said, keeping my voice level. The terms were that I would provide capital in exchange for ownership of the intellectual property. Those were the words in the contract. Those were the words you agreed to. She set her mug down with more force than necessary. You're really going to do this? You're really going to hold this over me? I'm not holding anything over you. I'm telling you what happened. If you want to discuss the future, we can discuss the future. But I will not let you rewrite the past. The silence that followed was thick with years of accumulated hurt. I could see her struggling, the same struggle I had watched so many times when she was younger, the battle between her pride and her need for something she could not provide for herself. Finally, she spoke. What do you want, Mom? What would it take for you to sign off on this deal? I had thought about this question for 3 days, turning it over in my mind during sleepless hours and quiet mornings. I had considered the money, certainly. $2.4 million was not insignificant, even split between us. Oh, but money had never been the real issue between Rebecca and me. I want to understand, I said. I want to understand why you left, why you blamed me, why 3 years of silence was your answer to our problems. That's not a business discussion. No, it isn't. But this isn't just a business relationship. She stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she stood up abruptly and walked to the window, her back to me. You want to know why I left? Because I couldn't breathe around you. Because every decision I made, you questioned. Every choice you second-guessed. I was 30 years old, and you were still treating me like I didn't know how to cross the street without your hand to hold. I questioned your decisions because some of them were going to fail. So what? So what if they failed? They were my failures, mine. I had a right to make them. You had investors. You had suppliers depending on you. You had responsibilities that went beyond your personal growth. She spun around. See? Right there. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You can't help yourself. You can't let me be wrong without pointing it out. I sat very still, absorbing her words. There was truth in them. I could not deny that. I'd always believed that my experience gave me insight, and that sharing that insight was a form of love. But love filtered through constant correction does not always feel like love. It feels like surveillance. I'm sorry, I said. She blinked, clearly not expecting that. I'm sorry that my help felt like control. I'm sorry that my experience felt like judgment. I wanted to protect you from mistakes I could see coming, and I did not consider how that protection might feel from where you were standing. She said nothing, but some of the tension left her shoulders. That does not change the legal reality, I continued. The patent is mine. The decision about what happens to it is mine. But I am willing to discuss options that might work for both of us. She walked back to the table and sat down slowly. What kind of options? I need to understand the full picture first. Tell me about the Meridian offer. Tell me what they actually want and what you would get out of it. For the next hour, she laid out the details. Meridian Water Solutions was a major contractor for FEMA and several international relief organizations. They had the manufacturing capacity, the distribution networks, and the relationships to deploy the filtration system at scale. The $2.4 million offer was for outright purchase of the patent, with additional royalties of 3% on each unit sold. Based on their projections, those royalties could amount to several $100,000 annually once production ramped up. And what's your role in all this? I asked. They want me as a consultant for the first 2 years, helping with implementation and troubleshooting. After that, I'm free to continue my nonprofit work or do whatever I want. So you get 2.4 million plus royalties plus a consulting fee. If you sign off on the transfer, otherwise I get nothing. I nodded slowly, processing the information. The offer was generous, perhaps suspiciously so. A company the size of Meridian did not pay premium prices without expecting significant returns. Have you had a lawyer review the terms? I have a lawyer, yes. She says the offer is legitimate. I'd like to speak with her. Rebecca's expression flickered with something that might have been annoyance or might have been relief. Fine, I'll give you her number. And I'd like to see the actual offer documents, not summaries, the originals. I can send them to you. Good. I stood up and collected our coffee mugs, carrying them to the sink. Stay for dinner. We'll talk more. She hesitated, and I could see the war playing out behind her eyes, the part of her that wanted to finish the business and leave, to minimize the exposure to old wounds, and the part of her that remembered sitting at this table for thousands of meals, that remembered what it felt like to belong somewhere. Okay, she said finally. I'll stay. I made chicken and roasted vegetables, a meal simple enough that I could focus on conversation instead of cooking. We talked about safer things while I prepared the food. Her work in Portland, the communities she served, the challenges of implementing water systems in areas with limited infrastructure. She spoke with passion and precision, and I recognized the engineer I had always known she could become, the professional who had grown into her own authority. You've done good work, I said as we sat down to eat. Thank you. She paused, fork halfway to her mouth. That means something, coming from you. It's the truth. You found your own path, and you made something meaningful of it. I almost didn't. She set the fork down. After I left here, I was a mess for about a year. Couldn't focus, couldn't commit to anything. I blamed you for all of it, which made it easier to avoid looking at myself. What changed? I ran out of people to blame. A thin smile crossed her face. Turns out that when you burn all your bridges, eventually you have to build something yourself. We ate in silence for a while, the kind of comfortable silence that families share when words are not necessary. I had missed this. I had missed her, more than I had allowed myself to acknowledge during the years of estrangement. After dinner, she helped me clean up, moving around the kitchen with the automatic familiarity of someone who had done this countless times. When the last dish was dried and put away, she leaned against the counter and looked at me. What are you going to do about the patent? I don't know yet. I need to think about it. I need to see the documents and talk to your lawyer and understand what I'm actually being asked to agree to. The offer expires in 30 days. Then I'll think quickly. She nodded, accepting this. I'm staying at the Hampton Inn by the highway. Call me when you're ready to talk. I will. She gathered her purse and jacket, then paused at the front door. Mom? Yes? Thank you. For dinner. For listening. You're my daughter, Rebecca. That hasn't changed. She left without another word, but something in her posture was different. Lighter, maybe, or just less defended. I spent the weekend reviewing documents. The Meridian offer was exactly as Rebecca had described it, professionally drafted and legally sound. The numbers were generous but not outlandish, consistent with what a company their size might pay for exclusive rights to a technology with significant humanitarian and commercial applications. But something nagged at me, an instinct honed by 30 years of reading contracts and evaluating business proposals. I called Rebecca's lawyer on Monday morning. Ms. Chen, this is Eleanor Vasquez, Rebecca's mother. Yes, Ms. Vasquez. Rebecca mentioned you might be calling. I've reviewed the Meridian offer and I have some questions. Of course. How can I help? The purchase price of $2.4 million. How did they arrive at that figure? A slight pause. It's based on their projections of unit sales over the first 5 years, discounted to present value. And what are those projections based on? Internal market analysis primarily. They've shared some of their methodology, but obviously the proprietary details remain confidential. Obviously. I let the word hang for a moment. Ms. Chen, in your experience, do humanitarian supply contractors typically pay premium prices for patents they intend to use for disaster relief? The pause was longer this time. What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm asking whether the valuation makes sense given the intended application. The technology has commercial applications beyond disaster relief. Water filtration systems are used in residential markets, industrial settings, recreational vehicles. Meridian may be positioning for broader market penetration. Maybe. Is there something specific concerning you, Ms. Vasquez? I looked at the documents spread across my dining room table. The patent application, the assignment agreement, the Meridian offer. 3 years of silence ending with a phone call at 11 on a Tuesday night. Not yet, I said, but I'd like to do some additional due diligence before I make any decisions. That's certainly your right, but I'd remind you that the offer has a 30-day window. I'm aware. Thank you for your time, Ms. Chen. After I hung up, I sat for a long while in the quiet of my house, thinking about water filtration systems and humanitarian contracts and the particular way my daughter's voice had sounded when she mentioned $2.4 million. Not excited, not relieved, tense, almost desperate. I made 2 more phone calls that afternoon. The first was to my own attorney, a steady-handed woman named Patricia Okonkwo, whom I had worked with for 15 years. I asked her to review the Meridian documents and provide an independent assessment. The second call was to an old colleague from my consulting days, a man named Robert Tran, who had spent 20 years in procurement for various government agencies before retiring to spend more time fishing. Robert, I need a favor. Eleanor, it's been too long. What kind of favor? I need you to ask around about a company called Meridian Water Solutions. Anything you can find out about their business practices, their financial health, their reputation in the industry. Any particular reason? Call it maternal instinct, he chuckled. That's usually the most reliable kind. Give me a few days. 3 days later, Patricia called with her assessment. The documents are clean, she said. Standard acquisition terms, nothing unusual in the royalty structure, reasonable representations and warranties. If you sign, you're signing away the patent permanently, but you knew that already. What about the valuation? High end of normal for a technology with proven applications, not outrageous but generous. Meridian clearly wants this deal. Why would they want it this much? That I can't tell you. Could be strategic positioning. Could be they have contracts lined up that depend on exclusive manufacturing rights. Could be they just see more potential than the numbers suggest. Companies have their reasons. Thank you, Patricia. Eleanor, one more thing. The assignment agreement between you and Rebecca is airtight. There's no legitimate legal challenge she could bring. If you decide not to sign, that decision is entirely yours to make. I know. Robert Tran called the next day. I found some interesting things, he said without preamble. Tell me. Meridian Water Solutions is solid, has been around for 12 years, good reputation in the industry, steady contracts with federal agencies and international NGOs, no red flags on the surface. But they've been expanding aggressively over the last 18 months. New facilities, new hires, new bids on major contracts. The kind of expansion that requires significant capital. Are they over-leveraged? Not exactly. They've taken on debt, but it's manageable if their growth projections pan out. The interesting part is where the growth is focused. They're specifically targeting the portable filtration market, small-scale, deployable systems. Like the patent they're trying to buy. Exactly like that. Word is they've been losing bids to competitors who have better technology in that space. The patent would give them a significant advantage. So the $2.4 million is really about market share. That's my read. If they can lock up the portable filtration technology, they can undercut competitors on major humanitarian contracts. The patent isn't just worth $2.4 million to them, it's worth whatever market share they can capture with it. Could be tens of millions over the EET next decade. I thanked Robert and sat with this new information. The picture was becoming clearer, but it raised as many questions as it answered. If the patent was worth tens of millions to Meridian, why was Rebecca willing to sell it for 2.4? Why not negotiate for a better deal or seek competing offers, unless she did not know what she had, or unless she needed the money quickly enough that she could not afford to wait for a better offer? I called Rebecca that evening. I've done my due diligence, I said. I have more questions. What kind of questions? The kind we should discuss in person. Can you come by tomorrow? She arrived at 10 the next morning, dressed more casually this time, jeans and a sweater. She looked tired. Coffee? Please. We sat in our familiar positions at the kitchen table. I'd placed a stack of folders between us, the accumulated research of the past week. I spoke with your lawyer, I said. I also had my own attorney review the documents, and I made some inquiries about Meridian's business position. Rebecca's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of something I could not quite read. The offer is legitimate, I continued. The documents are clean. There's no legal reason I shouldn't sign. So you'll sign? I didn't say that. I opened the top folder. Rebecca, why is Meridian offering $2.4 million for this patent? Because that's what it's worth. No, that's what they're offering. Those are not the same thing. She was quiet, watching me. Meridian is expanding into portable filtration systems. They've been losing bids to competitors with better technology. The patent would give them a significant advantage in a market worth potentially tens of millions over the next decade. I paused, letting that sink in. So why are you willing to sell it for 2.4? Because 2.4 is a lot of money. It is, but it's not what the patent is actually worth if Meridian needs it as badly as my sources suggest. Your sources? I was in this business for 30 years, Rebecca. I still know people. She stood up and walked to the window, the same movement she had made during her first visit. Her back was to me, her shoulders tense. What do you want me to say, Mom? I want you to tell me the truth about why you need this deal to happen quickly. The silence stretched between us. When she finally spoke, her voice was smaller than I had heard it in years. I made some mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The nonprofit I've been working for. I made some financial decisions that didn't pan out. Equipment purchases that were supposed to be covered by grants that fell through. I used personal credit to cover the gaps, thinking I could make it back. She turned to face me, and I saw something in her eyes I had not seen since she was a teenager. Fear. I owe almost $300,000, Mom. Personal debt, credit cards, a home equity line. If I don't find a way to pay it off, I'm going to lose everything. I absorbed this quietly. $300,000 in personal debt. A $2.4 million offer that would solve her problems instantly. The desperation I had heard in her voice suddenly made complete sense. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to know. Because I knew exactly what you would say. That I was careless, that I should have managed my finances better, that I made the same kind of impulsive decisions I made when we were working on the patent together. Is that what you think I would say? It's what you've always said. Every mistake I've ever made, you've been right there to point it out. I sat with that for a moment. The truth of it stung, even as I recognized the unfairness of her framing. Rebecca, I have never wanted you to fail, not once. I've wanted to help you avoid failures that I could see coming because I love you and I don't want to watch you suffer unnecessarily. But don't you see? Watching me suffer is exactly what you're doing now. You have the power to solve this problem, and instead you're sitting there with your folders and your due diligence, making me justify myself. I'm not trying to make you justify yourself. I'm trying to understand the full picture before I make a decision that affects both of us permanently. She sat down heavily across from me, all the fight suddenly gone from her posture. What else do you need to know? I need to know that you understand what you're giving up. The patent could be worth 10 times what Meridian is offering if you negotiated properly, if you sought competing bids, if you licensed instead of sold outright. You're talking about accepting a fraction of its real value because you need the money now. I know that. Do you? Do you really understand what you're walking away from? I understand that I need $300,000 in the next 60 days or the bank is going to start foreclosure proceedings on my house. I understand that my credit is destroyed and no one is going to lend me money. I understand that the $2.4 million from Meridian is the only lifeline I have. She met my eyes directly. I understand that you're the only person who can throw me that lifeline, and you're making me beg for it. I stood up and walked to the kitchen counter, needing a moment to collect myself. Outside the window, my neighbor was watering his garden. the spray of water catching the morning light in small rainbows. An ordinary day, continuing around us as if nothing important was happening. "I'm not going to make you beg," I said finally, "but I'm also not going to let you sell this patent for a fraction of its value without exploring alternatives." "What alternatives?" I turned to face her. "I'll pay off your debt." She stared at me. "What?" $300,000. I'll pay it off. Today, if necessary. You keep your house, you keep your credit from getting worse, and we take the time to properly evaluate what to do with the patent." "I can't accept that." "Why not?" "Because I've spent 3 years telling myself I don't need anything from you. Because accepting money from you feels like admitting that you were right all along, that I can't take care of myself, that I'll always need my mother to rescue me." I walked back to the table and sat down across from her. "Rebecca, listen to me carefully. I'm not offering you this money to prove that I was right. I am not offering it to control you or to buy your compliance or to make you feel obligated. I am offering it because you are my daughter and you are in trouble and I have the resources to help. That is what family does. That is what I should have done from the beginning, instead of insisting that every transaction between us be documented and contracted." Her eyes were wet now, though no tears had fallen. "You're serious." "I'm serious." "And the patent?" "We'll figure that out together, properly, with time to think and negotiate and get the best possible outcome for both of us. If that means working with Meridian, fine. If that means finding other buyers or licensing arrangements, fine. But we do it right, not desperate." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything, for leaving, for blaming you, for not calling for 3 years. I'm sorry, too, for the ways I made you feel small when I was trying to help you grow." We sat there in my kitchen, mother and daughter, holding hands across a table covered in legal documents and financial records. The morning light moved slowly across the floor, marking time in the way it always has. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you give me the banking information for your debts and I write some checks. Then we make lunch and we talk about the patent properly, like partners instead of adversaries. And then, eventually, you go back to Portland and your work and your life, and we figure out how to be family again. That simple? Nothing about this is simple, but we start anyway." The wire transfer cleared the next day. I paid off Rebecca's credit cards, her home equity line, the personal loan she had taken to cover equipment costs, $312,000 in total, which I transferred from my retirement savings without hesitation. Money can always be earned back. The chance to repair a relationship with your daughter comes far less frequently. Over the next month, we worked together on the patent situation. Patricia Okonkwo helped us engage a specialist in intellectual property licensing, a sharp woman named Vivian Rhodes who had experience in the water technology sector. She reviewed the Meridian offer and confirmed what I had suspected. The patent was worth considerably more than $2.4 million if properly leveraged. She proposed an alternative structure, a licensing arrangement instead of an outright sale. Meridian would get exclusive manufacturing rights for humanitarian applications, but Rebecca and I would retain ownership and receive royalties on every unit produced. More importantly, we would retain the ability to license the technology for commercial applications separately, which could generate significant additional revenue over time. The negotiations took 3 weeks. Meridian pushed back initially, but Vivian held firm. In the end, they agreed to the licensing structure with a signing bonus of $1.8 million and royalties that Vivian projected could equal or exceed the original offer within 5 years. We split everything equally. Whatever proceeds came from the patent would be divided 50-50 between us, mother and daughter. Not because the original assignment agreement required it, not because any lawyer demanded it, because we chose to be partners. On the day we signed the final documents, Rebecca drove down from Portland and we had dinner at my house. Chicken and roasted vegetables again, the same meal I had made on the night of her first visit. We talked about her work, her plans, the communities she was serving with her water filtration designs. She spoke with the same passion I remembered from when she was a young engineering student. But now there was a steadiness underneath it, a maturity that came from having made mistakes and survived them. After dinner, she helped me clean up, moving around the kitchen with the automatic familiarity I had missed so much during the years of silence. "Mom," she said as she dried the last dish. "Yes? Thank you. Not just for the money, for believing that we could figure this out together." "I always believed that," I said. "I just didn't always know how to show it." She nodded slowly, then set the dish towel down on the counter. "I should get back to Portland tomorrow, but I was thinking maybe I could visit more often, maybe once a month if that's not too much. That would be nice. And maybe," she said, meeting my eyes, "you could come visit me sometime, see the work I'm doing, meet the people I'm helping." I smiled. I would like that very much. She left the next morning, her rental car pulling out of my driveway under a pale gray sky. I watched her go until the car disappeared around the corner, then I turned back to my quiet house and the ordinary day waiting for me. The patent income started arriving 6 months later. The first royalty check was modest, but Vivian assured us the numbers would grow as Meridian ramped up production. More important than the money was what it represented. A collaboration that survived conflict, a relationship that healed through patience, a mother and daughter who learned to work together instead of at cross purposes. I still have the photograph on my nightstand, the one from Rebecca's college graduation. But now there's a new photograph beside it, taken on a Sunday afternoon in Portland when I visited her workspace for the first time. In this one, we're standing in front of a water filtration unit she helped design, both of us smiling at the camera. Not the forced smile of people who are pretending everything is fine, the real smile of people who have done the hard work of understanding each other. Family is not something you get. It's something you build and rebuild again. The foundation is there. What you construct on top of it is a choice you make every day. I choose to keep building.